Good evening to many of you, good afternoon to some, and good morning still others. Thank you so much for joining us today from all around the world. I am Masuma Raza with the Institute for Global Health and Development at Khan University. My role is to help us get started with a few comments to set the stage. First, a reminder that this session is being recorded and we will make the recording available at our website within a week's time. The Institute's website is aku.edu/IGHD. I will post this link in the chat box momentarily. We received registrations from various geographies for this webinar, and with such a diverse group involved, we can do some exciting things to learn together. And for that, we have enabled a few helpful features on Zoom to facilitate your involvement. I encourage you to use the chat function during the course of the webinar to send your comments to either the panelist or all the participants. And you can also wish to introduce yourself with your name, organization, and location if you are interested in networking. We have also enabled the Q&A function, which you may use to post specific questions for our moderator and speakers to address during the discussion. One of our objectives today is to help build communities and network of individuals who would like to explore working with us. Let us know if you are interested in collaborating. With that, I would like to get us started with just a few words to introduce our host and moderator, Dr. Zulfikar Bhutta, who is very well known to so many of you. Dr. Bhutta is the Distinguished University Professor and Founding Director of the Institute for Global Health and Development and Center of Excellence in Women and Child Health at the Khan University. He is also the co-director of Sick Kids Center for Global Child Health in Toronto. Dr. Bhutta, in turn, will be introducing our distinguished speakers. Dr. Bhutta, over to you.
Thank you very much, Masuma, and I hope that this will be a fascinating session. Hidden hunger or micronutrient deficiencies are no stranger as a concept to many people working in public health. In fact, I wish that we did not have our most recent estimates that are coming out tonight in the Lancet Global Health. They're still under embargo, which really highlight how a significant proportion of women and children in the world have micronutrient deficiencies. And micronutrient deficiencies of a nature that are not only egregious in terms of their potential impact on health and survival, but also potentially on long-term development. And the solutions are at hand. We have potential opportunities of redressing some of those micronutrient deficiencies through prevention strategies with food fortification, with targeted supplementation, and also with poverty alleviation and improvements in diets. And a range of those strategies are available. Today's webinar from the Institute for Global Health and Development will focus on the potential opportunities for addressing this with one of the most cost-effective interventions that we have, namely food fortification and strategies that can increase micronutrient contents of crops, such as biofortification. We have a fantastic panel, and I'll have the opportunity of introducing them one by one as a means of discussing a lot of these concepts and solutions with you over the next hour and a half. We want to underscore that this is a major pillar of work addressing food insecurity, novel solutions at population levels for reducing undernutrition of our Institute for Global Health and Development. And for those of you who are interested in the various mandates of the Institute, it ranges from addressing the complex issue of climate change and health and development outcomes to issues of gender equity, to issues of food security and development, and importantly, how best to implement sustainable development goals. And we hope to see some of you at our planned large conference on looking at water in the context of Pakistan and its development. It is my great privilege now to pass the floor to my dear friend, Professor Kausar Abdullah Malik, to set the scene as to why this topic is of importance for Pakistan. Professor Kausar Malik is the perhaps senior most agriculture scientist and academic in Pakistan. He's currently the Dean of Postgraduate Studies at Foreign Christian College and University in Lahore. He has had a distinguished career in public health and administration in Pakistan, having founded the National Institute of Biotechnology and Genetic Engineering, served as the chairman of the Pakistan Agriculture Research Council, and has led many organizational efforts, including being a member of the Planning Commission in Pakistan. He's been highly rewarded and he's received the highest national recognition with Halal Imtiaz. He is a fellow of the Pakistan Academy of Sciences and also the Third World Academy Sciences. And Kausar, floor is open to you for helping us understand why this is of such great importance to the country. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Zulfikar. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be part of this galaxy of colleagues. My presentation, I have made a presentation based on some of the technical work that we have been doing, and I hope that it fits into the opening remarks that I'm going to make. I mean, I've been involved with fortification, especially iron fortification, for quite some time. When MI was here, when GAIN and all these organizations have been involved in all this. And I have always, that has been my understanding, that all this fortification is not going to help the population at large, which is in the villages, in the rural population, because they do not get the flour or material from the mills, you see, because all that fortification needs a very well mechanized system of adding the iron EDTA or whatever, or zinc sulfate or things like that. So I had always thought that we should have our crops which are able to take or to allow the crops to have that kind of micronutrients in them, you see, you know. So with that, we started some work on looking at different crops, looking at their how much micronutrients they can take up and how much of that is bioavailable. You see, our thrust has been on looking at the bioavailability of these micronutrients to the human beings, you see, you know. So I will just briefly go over some of the slides just to show you the kind of work that we have been doing in this regard, you see. So could I share my screen, Asuma?
Yes, sir, you may.
This is the, you know, I mean, I'm sure all of you are aware of all this. I don't have to go over all this again. Now, these strategies to handle these micronutrients, as you all are aware, are either fortification or supplementation or developing transgenic plants, you see. So we, being a molecular biologist and biotechnologist, we have been focusing on developing transgenic plants with higher bioavailability of iron and zinc, you see. So I will briefly go through. I mean, in all this business, I'm sure all of you are aware that phytates are the most important component because these are powerful chelators and these are also called anti-nutrients. And these bind several of the free metal ions and these reduce their bioavailability, you see. And the bioavailability is defined as the measure for fractional utilization of orally ingested nutrients. So bioavailability is extremely important in order to assess whether a particular crop is useful as far as meeting the deficiency is of macronutrients or not, you see. So And as you can see that the majority of our foods have a fairly high content of phytates, you see, and this is the area where many of the plant breeders also focus that to select the varieties with a very low phytic acid content, you see. But for this purpose, we have been looking at some of the approaches based on transgenic plants. And these, as you can see, we have been looking at the low phytate contents or improving the nutritional capacity. So since we were interested in iron and zinc, we had taken the routes of inserting a phytase gene in the endosperm, which is expressed specifically in the endosperm of wheat, you see. So we had completed the work, and as you can see that many papers have been published by other colleagues in different crops, for example, in zinc, in rice, and selenium, calcium, all these have already been published. And this is a, very exciting area, you see. We had done all this transformation. We have, taken two most dominant varieties of wheat in the field. There's a Seher and Faisalabad 2008. And we had done all that. We had come to the, found starting from 5,000 embryos, we could only get 26 which were transgenic, confirmed by our PCR tests, you see. So this is the evidence of all this, all these lines that you can see in blue. These are the phytic acid content of the transgenic lines as compared to the control. This is the control of Seher and this is the control for Faisalabad. So reducing the phytic acid is one of the short evidence that you can increase the bioavailability of your elements, you see, And so this way had done all analysis of gene expression and all that, you see. And this we were able to show that we were able to increase the zinc bioavailability and both iron bioavailability by threefold in case of iron, and about 1.4 to 1.6 fold increase in case of zinc. This is the bioavailability. You see, I should emphasize that this is not the total zinc, you see. I will show you another, you see, for example, here you see the iron bioavailability, this yellow line shows the total available iron, and that line shows the bioavailability in flour. And the blue one shows the availability in chapati. We made chapati out of this and then tested the bioavailability, and so you can see in the case of zinc, also in case of iron, that as compared to the total, you can have very high total amount in the crop, but it may not be bioavailable, you see. So the amount of bioavailability is the one that we are interested in, you see. After that, we handed over the seeds to the director of the Field Research Institute, and because we were allowed by our biosafety committee to do the field analysis after looking at the technical data, you know. So these are some of the published material that we have already done. So all the take-home message is that there are, any material that we use for testing in the field, for nutrition, for feeding, has to be seen that whether there is bioavailable or not, you see, because all agronomists and the plant breeders tend to look at the uptake of the nutrient as one of the evidence. If you have a if variety with high zinc uptake, they would think that this is a material to be tested, you see, but that zinc may not be bioavailable. So you have to compare it with the amount of phytic acid which is there in the plant, you see. So if the phytates are also high, the bioavailability will be very low, you see. So these are some of the things that we keep stressing to all the people who are in the area of nutrition, and that we must look at the bioavailability of these elements. With these, I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, Kausar, and thank you for presenting this so succinctly. So without further ado, let me introduce our first keynote speaker. And I am personally delighted to introduce Dr. Eric Boy, who is the chief nutritionist at Harvest Plus. Harvest Plus, as many of you know, is an international nutrition sensitive agriculture and public health program that particularly focuses on ending micronutrient deficiencies through biofortification. He's a senior research fellow at the International Food Policy Research Institute, and he heads a fairly wide, diverse nutrition research portfolio combining food science, epidemiology, and studies of effectiveness and bioavailability of micronutrients through biofortified crops. His scope of work is global. He has extensive experience and work in Africa, Latin America, South Asia countries, and is currently heading this large portfolio of looking at the relationship of micronutrient biofortification and outcomes. Dr. Boy has a PhD in nutrition from UC Davis, one of the leading global institutions of higher learning. And today he will talk to us about the role of biofortification in particular and public health and nutrition outcomes. Eric, with great pleasure, the floor is yours. Apologies, but we can't hear you, so we'll come back to you. Our second keynote speaker that we will move to now is Professor Nicola Lowe. And Professor Lowe is a professor of nutritional sciences and director of the Research Center for Global Development at the University of Central Lancashire. She is a distinguished researcher in her field, has actually worked in Pakistan on many areas of micronutrients, particularly zinc. And her research program is focused on looking at sustainable solutions to global malnutrition. Between 2018 and 21, she worked within the UK Research and Innovation Institute as the Food Systems Portfolio Lead for Global Challenges Research Fund. She is also an adjunct professor at the Khyber Medical University, Pakistan, and research director of the Board of Trustees of the Abasin Foundation, a UK-based charity that works in the northwest of the country. She's a fellow of the Association of Nutrition, fellow of the Higher Education Academy, an advisor to the Commonwealth Committees, and is on several expert panels, including the WHO expert panel on dietary zinc requirements for children under 5 years. I've had the great pleasure of working with her recently on the big initiative to look at nutrient requirements across the world. So Dr. Lowe is going to talk to us today about exploring sustainable solutions for global malnutrition. Nicola, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Bhutta. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. Assalamu alaikum to all of my colleagues and friends in Pakistan. I'm going to share my screen, so hopefully this will work. I'm wondering if you can see my screen with the first slide up. Please let me know if you can.
Yes, we can. Just make it full screen now, Nicola, if you can.
Perfect.
Put it on presentation.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Yes, I'm going to be talking very generally about exploring some sustainable solutions to global malnutrition, and then talk a little bit about the research I've been undertaking with colleagues on biofortification. So As we all know, micronutrient deficiencies, also known as hidden hunger, affects 2 billion people worldwide. And according to the United Nations and FAO, the situation is deteriorating due to conflict and climate change. We only have to look at the floods that have affected a large proportion of Pakistan in recent months to know that this is a real issue, with at least 33 million people impacted and disruption to food systems. I've just returned from a visit to the flood-affected regions in the north of Pakistan, and this is a photograph I took that just really illustrates the scale of the devastation caused by the floods, the boulders and rubble that have ended up in destroying people's homes, livelihoods, and disrupting the food system in general. So looking at the trends over the last few years, if we look at the panel on the left at undernutrition, these data come from the food systems dashboard from the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition and Johns Hopkins University. You can see on the left-hand side that the prevalence of undernutrition in Pakistan began to make a steady decline from 2015 to 2017. However, this decline has gone into reverse and undernutrition is becoming more prevalent in more recent years. And this is alongside an increase in the prevalence of overweight and obesity, both globally and in Pakistan itself. So we have this double burden of malnutrition, or triple burden, as we now refer to it, with the micronutrient deficiencies as well occurring. And according to the Global Nutrition Report of 2021, to meet the global nutrition targets in most countries, we really do need to accelerate progress. We're way off track to meet 5 out of the 6 global maternal, infant, and young children nutrition targets on stunting and wasting, anemia, and childhood overweight, and no country is on track to reach the target for reducing salt intake or to halt the rise in obesity. So what are the strategies at our disposal to address micronutrient intake? Well, the 4 key strategies are here: supplementation, fortification, diet diversity, and biofortification. I'm not going to talk about supplementation because it's successful in a targeted way, but not necessarily sustainable. But I will focus some time on each of the others: fortification, diet diversification, and biofortification. So fortification, nutrients can be added during food processing or as the meal is served, for example, in the case of sprinkles. And one big success story in the world of fortification is iodine. Data tell us that the percent of households currently consuming iodized salt around the world has been massively increased in recent years, reaching 80 to 90% in many parts of the world. So the iodine fortification program has been hugely successful. However, it's important to note that for any fortification program, the quality assurance monitoring needs to be robust and effective. This slide is about a piece of work that I did some years ago in Pakistan. We undertook a community awareness raising program around the benefits of consuming iodized salt. And although we found that the awareness campaign was hugely successful, resulting in an increase in iodized salt sales in the local markets, this did not translate into improved iodine status in school children. And we wondered why this was. And when we looked into it a bit more closely and investigated a local salt manufacturing plant, we found that the salt, there was no quality assurance, no monitoring of the amount of iodine being added to the salt. And in fact, many packets of salt contain no iodine whatsoever. These photographs show how the iodine was being added to the salt with that white tube at the top of the photograph is where the iodine solution was dripped onto the rock salt, which was then collected and manually crushed and packed into bags without any quality control at all. So you can see that from this example that the monitoring of fortification needs to be very closely monitored for it to be successful. In 2016, Pakistan launched a new fortification program of vitamins A and D in edible oil and ghee. This has been successful in terms of good coverage. And one of the factors in that success is that the oil is processed in a limited number of facilities and the monitoring is effective. As Dr. Malik referred to earlier, slightly different situation with wheat flour. Iron and folic acid fortification has been trialed, but it's really difficult to get good coverage due to the large number of informal mills where individuals and farmers will take their grain to be milled, that are not participating in the program, and again, very difficult to monitor. Another strategy, very briefly, is dietary diversity, improving dietary diversity. We know that low dietary diversity is associated with micronutrient deficiencies. There are a number of tools available that can be used to assess dietary diversity. We've used this one produced by the FAO, United Nations, supported by USAID. That is a questionnaire that enables the determination of the minimum diet diversity score. It assesses the frequency of consumption of foods within various food groups, and there's a threshold score of 5 out of 10, below which the population is said to have not met the minimum dietary diversity. We've undertaken a study in a rural community in northwest Pakistan using this tool to look at dietary diversity. The panel on the left shows the 10 food groups that were assessed, and we found that more than half of the women at each of the time points we measured failed to reach the minimum dietary diversity score, and this was associated with a high prevalence of zinc deficiency at around 30%. The Global Nutrition Report talks about inequalities and the importance for high quality food to be affordable for all. So dietary diversity can only be successful when a high quality diverse diet is affordable, even for those living in the poorest communities. Moving on then to biofortification. I'm sure Eric will tell us more once he sorts out the audio issue about the success stories from Harvest Plus. Some highlights here: vitamin A rich maize in Zimbabwe, iron rich beans in Uganda, and zinc rich wheat and rice in Bangladesh. The scale up of biofortified crops depends on a number of factors. It really does require robust evidence for the improvements in the nutritional status of the target population through both efficacy studies and effectiveness trials. It's also essential that the biofortified crop is acceptable to producers and to consumers. And it's important for scale up that there is effective engagement and advocacy with policymakers, decision makers, but also with consumers. For the last few years, I've been part of a large-scale program to examine the impact of consuming a zinc biofortified variety of wheat on health outcomes. We refer to it as the Busy Fed study, and it's been in collaboration and partnership with colleagues around Pakistan and the UK. It was divided into 3 work packages. The first was a randomized controlled trial to look at the impact of consuming zinc biofortified flour for a period of 6 months in adolescent girls. The protocol has been published if you would like to read more detail about that. The second work package was focused on the performance of the crop, and this was led by my colleague, Professor Martin Broadley at the University of Nottingham. They have undertaken geospatial mapping and the performance of the crop under different soil conditions in 720 locations across Punjab province. And the third work package was all about the acceptability of the biofortified crop by speaking with community members, farmers, and undertaking stakeholder working. I don't have time to go through the results in detail, but just to highlight a few key findings from this study. We found that the dietary zinc intake could be increased by up to 5 milligrams a day through the consumption of biofortified flour. This did have a positive impact on some biomarkers of zinc status, including hair zinc concentration and preliminary data indicating that DNA damage was also reduced during the 6-month study. We found from our qualitative work that the flour and the grain was widely acceptable to consumers, providing the price was right. The price was the primary concern. And also farmers, the producers, the farmers, the reaction from them was also very positive. The Zincol 2016 provided a good yield, good quality. However, in order to get the best from the crop, a zinc fertilizer is required, and that is an additional cost that needs to be taken into consideration. So just to summarize, dietary diversification, nutritious foods need to be accessible and affordable for all, for that to make an impact. In terms of fortification, the success depends very much on the nutrient vehicle, the context, and also the effective monitoring. Biofortification has the advantage of being self-sustaining, but work is needed to ensure the acceptability to producers and consumers. In summary, then, there's no silver bullet, but a combination of approaches depending on the context and needs can certainly help to reduce micronutrient deficiencies. Thank you for your attention. Happy to take any questions at the end.
Thank you very much, Nicola, for that masterly overview. And thank you for sticking to time. Masuma, can I check if you've been able to ask Dr. Boy if he has been able to sort out his sound issues? Eric, can I pass the floor to you to perhaps try again and get your presentation up? Still can't hear you, Eric. At least I can't. Can you try once again? No.
Dr. Eric, can you join from your phone for the audio and continue presenting from your laptop?
We have Eric's presentation. I mean, we could handle the slides ourselves also, Masuma. Eric, do you want to connect from your device, and at least we can have audio and we can do the slides at our end?
I can present from from our end.
Just all the slides. Yeah. Eric, we still can't hear you. Maybe disconnect and connect from your audio device, just the phone, if you will. In the interval, kindly put your questions in the Q&A, and I'll do our best to accommodate everything. Masuma put it on full screen. So we have your slides, Eric, if you want to connect from your device, and at least that we can hear you then. I don't know what's going on. Eric, the problem's at your end because you can hear everybody else, and I just wonder if you can connect from your phone. Disconnect your laptop, and meeting ID does not exist when I call by phone. No, there is a link that we sent you. We sent you a Zoom link. I can forward that again to you. Just connect by that. It's the same as.
Hello, Dr. Eric. This is Hiba from IT. Sir, can you please connect the Zoom link from your
Dr.
mobile phone?
Hiba, can you speak louder?
Dr. Eric, can you please connect the audio from your mobile phone? Because I guess your speakers are not working off your laptop or your PC. So just connect it from your mobile phone.
Can you send him the link again, please, Hiba?
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. I do that.
Well, what I'll do is, while we sort this out with Eric, give you another few minutes. I'd like to pass the floor to one of our additional invited speakers, Dr. Irfan, and see if he has any comments to add while we make the audio work. So Dr. Irfanullah is a public health and nutrition expert with extensive experience in planning, partnership, strategy development. He's currently working with Nutrition International as a national program manager for its wheat flour fortification program, and works closely with the National Fortification Alliance in Pakistan on its food fortification strategy. And he has been invited to give a few comments because Shabina Raza could not get back in time from Indonesia. So Irfan, the floor is yours if you would like to make your intervention now.
Thank you very much, sir. So can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. So on the behalf of Nutrition International, I would like to thank and congratulate Dr. Zulfikar Bhutta, the AQ team, and our distinguished speakers for organizing such a wonderful event on mitigation hidden hunger. So basically, as discussed earlier, the triple burden of malnutrition includes the underweight, hidden hunger, where children suffer from a deficiency in macronutrients, and overweight. We are all aware that it threatens the survival, growth, and development of children, young people, economies, and nations. And globally, at least 1 in 3 children under 5 is not going well due to malnutrition, like in its more visible forms, which include the stunting, wasting, and overweight. And at least 1 in 2 children under 5 suffers from hidden hunger due to deficiencies in vitamins and other nutrients. So the hidden hunger or macronutrient deficiencies occur when the quantity of food that people eat does not meet their nutrient requirements. So they are not getting the essential vitamins and minerals they need for their growth and development. And as shared by earlier speakers, more than 2 billion people in the world today are estimated to be deficient in key vitamins and minerals, and particularly vitamin A, iodine, iron, and zinc. Deficiency occurs when there is no access to micronutrient rich foods such as fruit, vegetables, animal products, and fortified foods, and usually because they are too expensive to buy or locally unavailable. Okay, so group most vulnerable to macronutrient deficiencies are pregnant and lactating women and young children. So talking about the Pakistani context, Pakistan is the 5th most populous country in the world with an estimated population of around 235 million. And almost 40% of the population is living at or below the poverty line, and less than 5% of the total population is covered under social protection programming. So more than 1/3, that around 37% of the household are reportedly food insecure, with almost 1 in 5 being severely food insecure. Malnutrition affects half of the children and mothers in Pakistan. So the situation was even before the disaster that was mentioned by Dr. Lowe was not very favorable, as as far as the macronutrient deficiencies are concerned, and has worsened with this recent flood which had happened recently. So keeping in mind the impact of the recent global development on food insecurity, number of people unable to afford a healthy diet around the world was from 112 million to almost 3.1 billion. And major drivers of food insecurity and malnutrition are conflict, climate extremes, economic shocks, combined with the growing inequalities. And some of the examples are rising consumer food prices during the COVID-19 pandemic, which actually affected the all geographic areas of globally, income losses, and ongoing war in Ukraine, which is disrupting the supply chains and further affecting price of grain, fertilizer, and energy, which is resulting in further food price increase in the first half of 2022. And more frequent and severe extreme climate events, which are disrupting supply chains, especially in low-income countries. Evidence suggests governments repurposing the resources to prioritize food consumer and to incentivize sustainable production. So the supply and consumption of nutritious food will help make healthy diets less costly and more affordable for all. So this is something we need to do advocacy on with the respectable governments, both, I mean, talking in the Pakistani context, so at all levels, the national and provincial levels, for the integration of fortified food or the biofortified crop in the food basket. Having said this, the food fortification has the potential to address the malnutrition in a cost-effective manner. The WHO and the UNFAO have adopted 4 main strategies for improving dietary intake, which includes the food fortification, macronutrient supplementation, nutrition education, and disease control measures. So the large-scale food fortification of the staple foods and condiments people consume most is a sustainable and cost-effective solution to address some of the most common macronutrient deficiencies. The fortification of the staple food is one strategy that has a proven history in improving dietary diversity and effectively decreasing macronutrient deficiencies. So food fortification, it is a crucial intervention to decrease the risk of malnutrition before, during, and after pandemic, and is a potential solution in direction of achieving sustainable nutrition security. It is used successfully to correct nutrition inadequacies and their associated deficiencies. So the large-scale food fortification is a safe, very low-cost, effective, sustainable, and evidence-based public health strategy. And it's a high-impact solution, which includes addition of multiple macronutrients to flours and cereals, vitamins to cooking oil, and iodine into salt are some examples of food fortification that are also practiced in Pakistan, mentioned by the speakers earlier also. As we all know about the biofortification, it is a process of increasing the density of micronutrients in widely consumed staple crops through conventional plant breeding, agronomic practices, or genetic modification. So both large-scale food fortification and biofortification promote intake of micronutrients through diet, thus helping in prevention of infections and macronutrient deficiencies, which collectively account for the greatest unaddressed burden of disease associated with hidden hunger in low and middle income countries. So Nutrition International works on large-scale food fortification, however, recognizes complementarity of both approaches. And I would briefly touch upon the NI intervention. So, and with that, I'll close the comments. So Nutrition International, we are working as a trusted partner and a technical resource of the government of Pakistan for its nutrition-related program since 2001. And our key strategic areas are micronutrient supplementation, large-scale food fortification, provision of birth packages, and nutrition governance. And the main objectives of our large-scale food fortification under the wheat flour fortification is to sustainably improve access and consumption of wheat flour, which is fortified with iron, zinc, vitamin B12, and folic acid. And with the support of this program, Food Fortification Act was approved in 3 provinces, and 1.5 million metric ton fortified wheat flour was produced since 2016, and 14 million beneficiaries were reached with fortified product. The objective of the edible oil component is to sustainably improve access and consumption of edible oil and ghee with fortified with vitamin A and D, and 210,000 metric ton edible oil fortified on monthly basis. So the advocacy in the oil has increased. It has scaled up from 17 to 70%, 70+% now. The objective of the salt addition is the protection of newborn against the cognitive and mental impairments and the improved iodine status in women of reproductive age. We are supporting 400 plus salt processors under this program, and 427,000 metric ton, which is 85% of the adequately edible iodized edible salt is produced under this program. And 180 million people are reached every year with adequately iodized salt. So with this, I will once again thank you for bringing up the issue of macronutrient deficiencies and ways to address these through different approaches, and inviting Nutrition International to this auspicious event. We are looking forward to work together to address macronutrient malnutrition in Pakistan and globally. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Irfan. Masuma, can I check if I can't see Eric Boy online anymore? Have you been able to sort out his connectivity and sound issues?
We haven't been able to connect with him. I think he's not able to connect from his phone or from his laptop. We're trying to reach out.
That's most odd. Okay, so let me then, without further ado, pass to Dr. Jay Das. Dr. Jay Das is an assistant professor in the Department of Pediatrics, Child Health at Aga Khan University, and an assistant director in the Institute of Global Health and Development. And he is beginning a program of work on biofortification in Pakistan. He's currently actually on a field trip to try and organize a major intervention study. So, Dr. Jay, can I pass the floor to you for your intervention? And then we will go to Dr. Basira Chakzai and follow up with questions. But just before I do so, I can see Eric online again. Eric, can you hear me and can you speak, please?
I can hear you.
And we can hear you. Fantastic. So we are just going to give a couple of minutes to Dr. Das to make some comments, and then we'll come to your presentation, which everybody's waiting for. So Jay, please go ahead.
So, thank you, Dr. Bhutta. So I'll just begin by saying that we've recently started the work on biofortification, and because one of the factors that can help alleviate hidden hunger is that, as the previous speakers mentioned, one of the pathways is biofortification, and this is something which is being tested in various regions and countries of the world, and people are trying to understand what are the contextual barriers, how it can be better incorporated, and what the main I think the main issue or the main point of concern is that what food should we choose, and how it should be acceptable both to the producers and to the consumers at large. So I'll just share my experience that what we have done with Harvest Plus over the last 1 year, that we've tried to see that how zinc deficiency could be catered through biofortification, and how it could be implemented, what are the barriers, bottlenecks, and finally to conduct an efficacy trial to see whether biofortified zinc biofortified wheat could be a vehicle which can improve zinc status, and at the same time also address metabolic disorders in young adults and women of reproductive age. So with this, we conducted a survey. We did this survey looking at what are the most feasible ways, what are the market dynamics for introducing or for expanding at scale zinc biofortified wheat. So we did a market survey involving various stakeholders at all levels, from national, provincial, to the district, to the community. And we identified that the Harvest Plus has been working for over a few years, and they have developed some varieties with other partners in Pakistan. So there are locally available zinc biofortified wheat seeds available, and they have been in use. So I think the first one was produced in 2016, Zincol, which Dr. Nicola mentioned in her presentation, and various studies have been done on that. After that, in 2019, another variant, which is Akbar, was introduced. And as Dr. mentioned, I'm currently in the field, and I met a few stakeholders yesterday and day before yesterday. And what I'm seeing is that, and what they are saying is that in Punjab, this year, more than 50% of wheat seed which would be sown would be this zinc biofortified variety, which is Akbar. So this is highly encouraging to see the progress that has been made over the years, and to see that the results are good. People are accepting this new variety, and this new variety was shown last year that it was sustainable to extreme weather changes. As we know, that in the month of March of this year, there was an extreme heat event, which was unusual, and it did had an impact on wheat crop production. But fortunately, this variety was resistant compared to other strains, and it has been widely acceptable now. And talking about biofortification and CC, as Dr. Nicola also mentioned in her presentation, that with flower fortification, the major issue, if we don't go with biofortification and we choose fortification, the major barrier in our context is that most of the flour that is used is from those unlicensed or chakis that are at a small scale, and these chakis are very small scale, present in various towns and villages where most of these people rely on. So they don't have an actual mechanism through which fortification could be a feasible strategy. So biofortification also could be a strategy which can overcome this inherent barrier that we have in our context. And so with this, I'll just mention that we are starting an efficacy trial, and this efficacy trial would look at it would have different arms. So one of those arms would be looking at the zinc biofortified wheat flour. Then we have an arm of fortified flour, zinc fortified flour, and then we have a control where we're going to use the conventional wheat flour. And we're going to look at the effect in adolescents and young women, both in terms of the impact on zinc status, the anthropometric outcomes, looking at their growth, and also, as the recent literature has shown, that zinc deficiency is linked to metabolic disorders. And we want to see whether providing zinc through fortified flour or through biofortified wheat flour could have positive impact on these metabolic biomarkers, and can help diabetes mellitus. So this is something that we're embarking on, and hopefully by next year we should have some results to share. And thank you with this. So
thank you very much, Jay. And without further ado, finally, last but not the least, Eric Boy. I've already introduced Dr. Boy. So Eric, please, the floor is yours. And Masuma, kindly share Eric's slides, please.
I can use the set that I have, if you don't mind.
Oh, yes, you can. You can. I mean,
Okay.
if you can share now that we have audio.
Yes, sorry about that.
As penance, I'm going to pass all the difficult questions to you, Eric, now.
Oh, thank you. Then I'll play mute. I'll pretend I'm mute then. So good day to you all. I will go directly into the task that was assigned to me, which is speak to the to the economics of biofortification as one of the options that we have for tackling macronutrient malnutrition. So this work was done mostly by Keith Lividini, who's no longer with us. And let me start then by saying that micronutrient deficiencies, as was said before, and by hidden hunger here, I mean zinc, iron, vitamin A deficiencies, is really concentrated in the African and South Asian countries. As you can see, the darker shaded countries have the greatest numbers of disability adjusted life years lost to those deficiencies. And the situation seems to be getting worse, and not because of the food supply per se, but because among other things, climate change has been modeled and predicted to decrease the concentration of iron, zinc, and protein in several of the major staple crops in the world. Estimates for iron go from 5 to even 10%, depending on the agroecological situation. You can see South Central Africa, where the darkest spot is. That's where the increase in CO2 and rising temperatures are supposed to decrease the concentration of iron in staple crops the most. But a similar decrease has been projected for zinc and protein. And so the situation might get worse. Therefore, biofortification, since its beginning, has been a holistic plant breeding approach, where plant breeders don't just add the nutritional trait to the seeds that they are developing. They add the nutritional trait on top of what are called non-negotiable core traits. So these include agronomic yield, pest tolerance, where necessary, drought tolerance, or excess water tolerance, depending on what the ecosystem where those seeds are going is like. So these traits are never sacrificed. They are non-negotiable, and the nutrients are just added on top through several cycles of plant breeding in the field. So we have this other tool, the biofortified seeds, tubers, roots. And now, how do we make the choice of where these crops would perform better, create the greatest positive impact on nutritional status and health before we decide to scale up? So we have to be selective, prioritize where the impact will be the greatest. And the exercise that fellow Keith Lividini did was he took the data from the nutrient balance sheets from the FAO, combined them with several different sources of food composition. The nutrient content in all of these crops would have adequacy or ease environmental index. And he did that using the universal currency of economists and health economists, the disability adjusted life year. And you can see in this scatter plots that there is a direct relationship between the intake of produced.
Eric, we are losing audio, so you may want to speak closer to the mic, please.
Yes, thank you.
Having major audio problems again, Eric. Sorry about that. Anyway, continue, please. Oh, we've lost audio. Eric, is there a loose connection somewhere?
Hello,
Doctor,
hello.
yes, we can hear you now, Dr. Eric.
Okay. I don't know why. Okay. So
I
the
think it's a
DALIs are
battery.
based. Yeah. So the DALIs are based on epidemiologically. It is known that iron deficiency produces severe iron. And it becomes a risk factor for death, hemorrhage, prematurity, and other outcomes, negative outcomes. So these negative outcomes are used in calculating the weight of the burden produced by these deficiencies. Now I can't move the slides. There. And so at Harvest Plus and around the world, researchers started wondering about these deficiencies. And Laura Pompano and I did a meta-analysis of the relationship between zinc intake and non-communicable diseases, specifically type 2 risk factor cardiovascular disease. And so through that analysis, it was found that the smaller doses, that is 25 milligrams per day, given for longer periods of time, significantly reduce the levels of several intermediate risk factors for non-communicable diseases, namely fasting blood glucose, risk factor of type 2 diabetes, and high lipoprotein, low density lipoprotein. So with that finding, we modeled what would it mean to add zinc to it, and using some data from for every 2 extra milligrams of zinc, there was a reduction of about 17 milligrams per deciliter in fasting blood glucose and 10 milligrams per deciliter of low density lipoprotein. And so increasing the zinc from biofortification, not a tablet, would probably be a proportion of this effect. I mean, added zinc through biofortification could produce some proportion of this desirable effect. So then we went on and started creating a model. And here you see the assumptions on the cost that go into biofortification. There are costs associated with the delivery of the seeds to the farmer, and the training of people that are producing the seed and the farmers on how to best manage their crops. And then there were costs to the breeding process and developing the crops correctly. So all these costs were taken from our field operations for some of the crops. And then we generated figures of impact. And here in a map, you can see the disability adjusted life years attributed to zinc deficiency on the top, the blue maps, and the darker the country, the higher the number of DALIs produced by zinc deficiency. And this is using diarrhea, morbidity, and mortality in children as the negative outcome. But then at the bottom, you can see when you calculate the DALIs associated with zinc deficiency producing non-communicable diseases, type 2 diabetes, there is also a significant number of burden associated to the deficiency of zinc when we look at these non-communicable diseases, either as total number of DALIs or the proportion of DALIs that could be saved through additional zinc. sorry, so these maps are what they are mapping is the number of DALIs saved by introducing high zinc biofortified wheat to these countries. And this other set of maps tells us what happens when rice with biofortified with zinc is introduced, and the number and proportion of DALIs saved. So here we can see a small difference in the shade, in the darkness of the shades of the countries, and I will summarize that later. But it's always South Asia and parts of Africa. You see, wheat affects more Africa than rice. And so the bottom line is that from those projections, we picked 3 countries with large populations where zinc for wheat or rice are consumed as staples, and then calculated the DALIs that would be saved by introducing wheat, zinc, or zinc wheat or zinc rice, and found that the impact of for Bangladesh, the impact in reducing zinc deficiency DALIs, the traditional way, or zinc deficiency DALIs associated with non-communicable diseases, rice was better for Bangladesh. But there was a greater potential of impact in Pakistan if we use wheat. In India, the impact of wheat and rice are more or less equal, as you can see in the graphics, where you present the number of DALIs and how they move when you introduce either zinc or wheat. So significant proportions of zinc deficiency and non-communicable disease-related DALIs can be saved if these strategies are fully scaled. So here we're looking at the best possible scenario where most of the wheat is replaced in Pakistan by biofortified varieties, which is, of course, the dream, but it's probably never going to happen. So how does that compare? So we saw that biofortification with zinc is effective, how much it costs, and so how does it compare with the other interventions? This is a relatively older but illustrative representation of the cost per DALI saved that each of the 3 major interventions for hidden hunger can have. And so supplementation with vitamin A was said to cost about $12 per DALI saved, with a coverage of 75% of the intended population, and that includes the capsule plus delivery, etc., not just the capsule itself. Fortification was calculated to each DALI saved $37, and for biofortification here, what Howdy did was to assume 2 different scenarios. One for 50% of the market share has been occupied by biofortification. The other one, the pessimistic scenario, where half of that was covered. And so to save 1 DALI with an iron or zinc crop in South Asia, that is wheat or rice, it would cost optimistically $1 to $10, like the supplementation capsule, more or less. And pessimistically, if coverage were only 25%, each DALI saved would cost between $3 and $34. So anything below $25 is supposed to be, according to the WHO and the World Bank, a great deal for public health. And as you can see, most of the biofortification products are around way below 25, except for the sweet potato, which for reasons of how slowly it grows and propagates, it can be more expensive, and the weight for transportation, etc. So these are the the calculation sheets, I can share them with you for different scenarios. What the cost of DALI saved is for each of the crops. And in summary, I think we can say that by starting with a broad-reaching biofortification strategy, we can have a wide impact if we scale it up. Biofortification has potential for preventative impact if it's scaled through domestic production, so no importation, no additional cost of that kind. And complementarity with additional interventions, like we saw, is always necessary because biofortified food products are more intended for the rural markets and households and not for the big cities, where processing might result in the loss of too much of the micronutrients. And I will leave it there and perhaps leave some time for questions later on. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Eric. We will move right to the questions in the interest of time, which I'll pass through the panel. And Dr. Basir Achakzai, I will give you the floor at the end to give us your closing comments and your overall thing. So first question that I may pose to you for starters, Eric, and then move to Nicola, is why isn't rice fortification a successful potential strategy, and what is the situation in Pakistan?
Well, rice has a wider genetic by environment variation than wheat insofar as zinc. So it has been very hard to reach the intended target level of an additional 12 ppm of zinc for the rice. In addition to that, rice milling, where we have been testing it, that is in India and Bangladesh, is so extreme, 15, 18% of the rice grain is milled off. And with that, you lose, well, B vitamins, iron, and a lot of the zinc, especially when, like in Bangladesh, the rice is parboiled, and that permits even more extreme par milling, intended to give a consumer preferred shape to the rice, and which brings a higher price. And so the milling is very extreme, and that leaves, instead of 12 ppm, somewhere around 8, sometimes 6 ppm, and it in real market condition that becomes very problematic. So and then you need to consume, like in Bangladesh, 400 grams of rice uncooked per day in order to get about 25% of the estimated average requirement.
Wonderful. Let me move quickly to the other important question, which I'll pass to you, Nicola, which is what is the price differential between fortified flour and non-fortified flour? And in your experience, has this been an issue?
I don't have a precise answer for that. It has been raised as an issue by members of our focus group discussions, the consumers, who clearly price is an important factor in making a choice between fortified or biofortified versus standard flour. So yeah, I don't have an exact answer to that. I'm going to defer to Eric on this. He's done more work on the cost effectiveness of the production of biofortified varieties. But I mean, common sense would say that once those initial costs for producing the seed and the development work is dealt with, then the additional cost to the farmer for the production is really around the use of fertilizers, zinc-rich fertilizers. That the crop does perform at its best when there is plenty of zinc available in the soil, and if it's not there naturally, then fertilizer is required for that, which will increase the cost to the farmer and therefore to the consumer. Sorry, I don't have a more precise answer about the comparison between fortified versus biofortified, but Eric may have an answer for that.
Eric,
if I may
anything to
try.
add?
Yes, the reason that is making biofortified wheat seeds a bit more expensive right now is it's a supply problem, and the production of the wheat used for all the trials that have been implemented has been very intensive in labor and other inputs, and so that makes it a little more expensive. I mean, you have to foliarly spray the plants up to 3 times during growth, and that is not usual. That's not done for the conventional wheat. So it should be the same cost, but for trial purposes, it is artificially higher because it takes all those other inputs to produce high quality wheat.
So what you're saying in essence is that as the economies of scale come up and as these things become more widespread, the price differential will reduce. And I agree with that. I mean, there was a time when the iodized salt had the same issue. And over time, the price differential has become minuscule. There are a few other important questions in chat and in the Q&A that I will pass just so that we are able to cover them. One very important question is around the use of pesticides and fertilizers as to whether or not they can increase or decrease the bioavailability of micronutrients. I don't personally think there is an impact, but it does obviously can be used as an adjunct strategy for improving micronutrient concentrations. Eric? Any thought? You're muted, Eric.
Yes.
Unmute, yeah.
Does biofortification have any impact on bioavailability?
No. Well, use of fertilizers and pesticides.
No, the latter two for sure don't have any impact. The most important inhibitory factor to zinc absorption is phytate, and so the degree of so in biofortification, phytate doesn't really go up proportionately to the zinc concentration. So what you have is a lower phytate to zinc ratio. So it should help, if not hinder, absorption. But in studies, it's been found that bioavailability or absorption of zinc is practically the same. It's not very different.
Maybe, Kaushal, can you comment a little bit on the use of fortified fertilizers, maybe zinc fortified fertilizers in Pakistan?
Yeah, okay. But I would also like to take this opportunity to, we should very categorically define what is the biofortified crop, you see, I mean, here, many of the plant breeders think that if they apply a micronutrient as a fertilizer, and it will be taken up by the plant, and there will be an increased uptake. So that sometimes they term that as a biofortified crop. You see, as far as I am concerned, I mean, you have to, see whether all that which has been taken up is biofortified or not, or is bioavailable or not. You see, or in other words, they have to combine the phytic acid estimations along with their nutrient estimation. You see, I mean, there has to be a strategy to screen for the lower phytic acid varieties. You see, I mean, that inherently will allow higher bioavailability.
Okay, well, there is a very important question posed to us in terms of positive deviance models. Are there any real successful studies in the country on potential acceptability, increased food consumption with some of these products, and could that help us decide which commodity to fortify or otherwise? Jaidas, I'm going to pass this question to you. Are there any local models that have worked?
There have been quite a few studies looking at the acceptability of various products, and also looking at the acceptability of the zinc biofortified flours also. But I think there is still a comprehensive study is lacking looking at, because as we all know, Pakistan has a diverse geography and culture, and even the dietary patterns and behaviors are not same. So they vary by region. The staple food and the most widely consumed food also vary by the various areas of Pakistan. So a comprehensive study, as far as I know, doesn't exist, but there have been individual studies looking at the acceptability in a limited population, and those have shown acceptance of various food. But again, as I would say, that a comprehensive evidence would be lacking on this, and Dr. Nicola has also conducted those acceptability studies on zinc fortified and biofortified flours, and I see her hand is raised, so would like
Nicola?
to add anything to it? Yeah, Nicola.
No, just wanted to really concur with what Dr. Malek was saying there. We have undertaken some qualitative work around the acceptability of biofortified varieties amongst consumers in a rural, very conservative rural community in the Northwest. And I have to say, you know, there is a big challenge there. There's a lot of suspicion and skepticalness regarding anything that changes the regular food supplies. And we had to work really, really hard with the community to get a good level of acceptance and to dispel any myths and rumors that were circulating. Once a rumor or a myth about us gets out of hand, it's very difficult to put that into reverse. So we had to work very hard with community elders and respected community members to reassure, to answer questions very quickly, any concerns very quickly about any risks associated with eating these biofortified crops. But once that had been achieved, and the acceptance was very high. So I think, yes, there are going to be pockets around in perhaps more rural regions where that groundwork really does need to have to be done in order for that acceptability to be present.
Okay, I'm going to pass a question to Dr. Irfan on the stability of some of these products, fortified products during storage. And have there been any studies looking at content over time? And not just biofortified, just generally fortified products. Dr. Irfan?
Yeah, yes. Basically, we had only conducted a study on the sensory attributes of the fortified products, but on the stability, we didn't conduct any study here in Pakistan of these products. There was one study conducted on the, there is no study on the wheat flour and the edible oil fortification, but one study was conducted with regards to the salt iodization only. And that the stability of the potassium iodate, which is used for the iodization purpose, was linked with the form of the salt that is used for the iodization purpose. So what we found during that study was that the rock salt, which was extracted from the northwest province, Karak, had many impurities, and because of that, the iodine, the potassium iodate, which was used for the iodization purpose, was not stable. But the similar, rock salt, which was extracted from the Punjab areas, the salt range, the stability was quite, it was sufficient and satisfactory. So with regards to the salt iodization, we had conducted this study, but we are planning to conduct these studies with regards to the wheat flour. Zamir Haider, I have Zamir Haider, the National Program Manager for Edible Oil, also with us. So if you want to add something on this, with regards to the edible oil fortification.
Quickly, please.
Yes, please. If any, otherwise. Okay, we can send in the chat box. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So one big question also that is posed here is, what role does climate change play in all of this? And currently, nobody working on nutrition, or in fact, for that matter, health in Pakistan, can avoid being confronted with a real issue of long-term and medium-term impact of climate change on some of these factors. So as you deal with the issue of agriculture, climate change, resilient crops, how does biofortification fit in this? Are these products generally possible to introduce in the context of water scarcity, water security, and a changing global environment? How would you marry the concept of innovation with what we need to do to also innovate to address climate change, which does mean increasing food production, which does mean producing more resilient crops, drought-resistant crops, etc. So I'm going to open it to the panel completely. Maybe start with you, Kausar.
Yeah, okay. See, I would suggest that one strategy that we should try to explain to the plant breeders is that in their breeding system, they must incorporate the phytic acid content of the varieties. I mean, there's a lot of interest in the plant breeders nowadays to go for the low phytic acid variety. There has been some work in rice also being done on a low phytate rice varieties, and similarly, wheat and all important crops must have that built in, that if the variety has a low phytate content, that automatically we can assume that the micronutrient bioavailability will also be higher. So that has to be told to the plant breeders that they must take that as their normal goal, you see. As they do it for all other traits, you see, this should be considered as one of the important traits, you see. This is my suggestion.
Eric, your thoughts?
Eric, you are muted.
Yeah, sorry. I was looking for a document to answer a chat question. Could you summarize the question again for me? Hello?
Shall I? I was suggesting that the plant breeders should keep the phytic acid content of their variety as one of the traits. You see, the lower phytic acid, better it is for the bioavailability of micronutrients.
Okay. Yes. We tried that with some cultivars of wheat from CIMMYT, which had more phytase, meaning that when processed, the wheat would activate the phytase and decrease the phytate. And the variation of phytase in wheat didn't really decrease the phytate and had no impact on the bioavailability of the zinc. Now, so it's really not possible, given the variation in that crop, to decrease the phytate levels in the seed, unless, of course, you do it transgenically, and that could have impact on the yield, because phytate serves a protective role for the plant. So I don't think that breeders are looking into that strategy to increase.
But is there any work, Eric, going on looking at breeding, particularly to address climate change and micronutrient approaches at the same time?
Yes, in China, there have been a couple of experiments in artificial environments where they increase the CO2 level in the chambers, and they have noticed that the decrease in zinc, protein, and iron, and I believe calcium, between 3 to 8% decrease with increasing CO2 levels. Temperature, we were just talking about that with our head of crop development, and those studies haven't been done, at least as far as I know, for wheat.
Okay. All right, great. Nicola, any thoughts on this?
I don't have anything to add to what's already been said. I am also familiar with the work that Eric referred to around the reduction in zinc, iron, calcium content of wheat as the CO2 levels in the atmosphere rise. So yeah, I guess the point there is that even more reason to focus on high bioavailability, zinc-rich varieties.
Well, there is clearly an opportunity for collaboration and cooperation in these areas. And there is a suggestion in the chat from Dr. Jatoi as to how we can build such a collaboration in Pakistan. I think this work on micronutrient interventions, biofortification, climate change is all stuff that cannot be done by any single individual or department. So it requires really setting up a network in the country. And that's one of the reasons why our institute is so insistent on doing this work through advocacy, through bringing stakeholders together, webinars. This is probably our third webinar on the issue of nutrition, climate change, and this one specifically is on biofortification, but we've had these similar topics before. So we would encourage the group that is currently on this call to keep this network going and to look at opportunities of now that COVID has abated a bit of in-person meetings. And one of those will be in December when we bring people together to specifically talk about climate change and particularly water issues in the context of Pakistan. I want to give one final question to the panel, and then we will try and round off with some summary comments from Dr. Basira Chakzai. So my final comment to all of you is, it still seems a very narrow micronutrient portfolio, whereas the deficiencies that we know at a population level in Pakistan are multiple. I mean, it's the same people, same women of reproductive age deficient in iron and folic acid and vitamin D and zinc and so on and so forth. So whatever you want to probe, you find that they're deficient. In that circumstance, do we do more harm than good by going and supplementing or fortifying one micronutrient and not addressing others, especially when there is at times an adaptive balance of micronutrients? I mean, we know this very well from folic acid and B12. If you give one without the other, you can actually make outcomes worse, both in the short term and clinical terms. So what do you say to this? Maybe because I have you on my screen, Nicola, I can start with you.
I would argue strongly that we are doing more good than harm by focusing on single micronutrients. I totally agree that nutrient deficiencies do not occur in isolation. They're always in combination, and ideally addressing all of them is the way forward, and that's a future goal. But I think that's one of the beauties of biofortification, in that the amount of the nutrients that's assuming zinc in this situation that is provided is through a food matrix. Therefore, those acute interactions between zinc and other minerals are ameliorated by being present in relatively low concentrations within the food matrix. And that's the reason why I think we are doing much more good than harm.
Eric?
Yeah, I agree with Nikki, and I wanted to bring attention to her study with wheat in Pakistan, where even though the zinc biomarker didn't change, iron biomarkers improved, because when zinc goes up in most cereal crops, iron goes up too, not proportionately, but in this case, the study intended to provide zinc mostly and iron as a secondary objective, and iron was also efficacious in this group of women. So other than the folate and B12 phenomenon, which hasn't really panned out in epidemiologic studies, most of them, I think that there is much more benefit than harm in providing the nutrient or nutrients that food can provide. I mean, the idea would be to have a food basket of biofortified crops, while dietary diversity comes along with greater income for people, this is one alternative to get one or more nutrients into the food supply, which is something we've been trying to do in Andhra Pradesh with Saurabh from Cornell. And it's very, well, it's not more expensive to do, and the kids get, vitamin A, zinc, and iron all at once.
Okay, well, do you have any thoughts on this, Dr. Irfan and Dr. Jay?
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Dr.
Dr.
Jay,
Irfan,
do
please.
you want to go first?
You can go first, then I can.
Okay, thank
Go
you.
ahead,
So,
Dr. Irfan.
yeah, thank you, sir. So this is one of the reasons that looking at the NNS 2018's data also, and the intervention that we had originally planned, under the food fortification program, which were based on the findings of the nutrition survey of 2011. We went for a combination of the iron, zinc, folic acid, and vitamin B12 in the wheat flour, and also vitamin A and D. And although the wheat flour, it is is scaling up right now. It is in implementation phase, but the edible oil has scaled up to a large extent. And I'm not saying that this is only because of the edible oil fortification only. There are other factors as well, which has contributed to the reduction of the vitamin A deficiency, yet the vitamin D deficiency has increased. And that is why we are, this is something else that we are considering, and we are working on the revising of the standards of the vitamin D fortifications in addition. So yes, combination is something that is to be considered with regards to the reduction of the multiple macronutrient deficiencies. Yeah, over to Dr.
Jay Das.
Yeah, so I think very, very highly relevant question that, of course, the micronutrient deficiencies don't just limit itself to one. There are multiple micronutrient deficiencies, and every micronutrient is important. So more needs to be done, and but this does not confer or defer anyone for working on a single micronutrient. So they have their own positives, and as Dr. Boy and Dr. Lowe said, that it is doing more good than harm. So this should be continued, but we should find other ways to see how we can do or address this multiple micronutrient deficiencies. And apart from this, fortification, supplementation, which of course do play a role and will continue to play a role, but we also need to look at how dietary diversity, how improvement in the quality of local foods and consumption patterns could also be improved, considering the constraints that we have with poverty, with the socio-demographic factors. So I think there's no one answer, there's no one window solution to this, and multiple approaches would be required at the same time to address this important multiple micronutrient deficiency question.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm very grateful that Dr. Basira Chakzai has been so patient throughout this session. As you know, he's the director at the federal level of nutrition program and the center, and particularly has a lead role in terms of trying to address these things at a policy level, both in normal situations and also abnormal situations. And he's leading the flood relief program, particularly from the nutrition side. So it's my great pleasure, Dr. Basir Chakzai, would you kindly say a few words on your overall take on the seminar, and also on your views on how we can maybe proceed with fortification and biofortification. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, Professor Bhutta, and I'm extremely thankful to the Institute of the Global Health and Development and all the partners, especially the researcher, the academician, or the development partner who participated in this. While listening to all the researchers, the academicians, so especially the government representative have another side of the coin, which he wanted usually to explain. So I will try my level best to very much summarize the situation, current situation, what the government is thinking, and what our approaches are, and what we think when the researcher or the academicians put forward in front of us certain data which is very much relevant to our population and the health of our population. You all are aware that Pakistan is unfortunately a country where we usually face one after the other disaster, human, man-made, natural, or whatsoever. The climate change is the big factor nowadays currently. So as a government entity, the Ministry of National Health Services, since the health is a devolved subject, but we currently here play a role of coordination with regard to coordinate with all the stakeholders, researchers, academia, and the provinces, the national and international partners. Sir, if you remember that we, first of all, we developed a national action plan on macronutrient deficiency. Yes, this is the one of the top most problem with regard to health. The general malnutrition situation in Pakistan is the poorest one. And when we talk about the micronutrient deficiencies, so you just look at, sir, that after all the interventions which so many actors have carried out, except the iodized salt, which was, the government-led project, and all the partners were putting their weight into the interventions of those iodine deficiency in Pakistan. So we got some result, and that result has been, and the result is evident that if we all together put together our support and coordination among us, so we can do. I will just that Dr. Lowe said that combination of efforts, combination of approaches is the topmost. When all the stakeholders, all the actors, all the researchers, they put their thoughts together, and based on these thoughts, a policy is made, and then that policy is implemented by whom? By those who are responsible for that policy implementation. So unfortunately, in Pakistan, the biggest area with us is the food-related laws which are not implemented. And sir, I will just share one very unfortunate step that just today from one of the biggest ministry. I got a letter that they are thinking the Prime Minister has asked them to share that what is the need of the current flood and flood, especially children. So the word written in that letter was that formula milk need and other nutritious food needs. So you just imagine that currently we have not been able even to tell the policymaker that what is the difference between breast milk or the formula milk, and how can, in which scenarios, in which condition we can use the formula milk, and why in this huge scale. So my I'm coming back to this, that we are providing a platform to all the stakeholders, like the Nutrition International, UN agencies, or all the even the Harvest Plus people. We are providing them a platform to come forward and to sit together, and we can coordinate with each other, and we can focus on one central point, not on, for example, if we cannot do one intervention by one organization, so their expertise could be utilized and bring together to work together for achievement certain targets. I'm just will focus on one more thing, and that is that the National Fortification Alliance, when we formed that, so we provided an opportunity to the private sector, whatsoever Irfan has said, like wheat fortification, oil and ghee fortification, and salt fortification. So that platform provided an opportunity to each and every stakeholder who come to us and they seek our assistance, and we provided them, like with the industry. We facilitated all the process which was required.
Starting route to Holiday in London.
we were provided all the opportunities to development partner to interact with the private sector, and that facilitation role was played by us, by the ministry, with the oil industry, with the wheat industry, and last but not the least, with regard to the biofortification, we even with the Harvest Plus, I am currently playing a role. I'm acting for them, that how important this biofortification is, especially zinc coal, 2016 and 20 years, blah blah. So my request to academia would be that whenever you have a research results, or you have a research paper, so that should be a platform where these papers or that research work could be shared for certain analysis, and based on that, certain policy mechanism should be developed by the federal entities, and then accordingly we will be transforming this to the provincial entities. And sir, one very big thing to Kausar Malik Saab and to Bhutta Saab, your good self, that the nutrition is an intersectoral initiative or subject and job. But unfortunately, in Pakistan, we have not seen a big and close role by Ministry of Food Security, Planning Commission, or the NFRC, or the other people. So that should also be addressed one way or another way. While I'm currently thinking on that we should bring a holistic legislation for food fortification in Pakistan, and nobody should be doing anything without that legislation. So that is my one point, and I'm always there to support all the development partners, especially the academia, Aga Khan University, Professor Bhutta, your good self, and we admire and we appreciate your hard work and your supporting to us in one way or another way, as a chair of or one of the biggest committee, and also as a mentor to the nutrition wing of Ministry of Health. I thank you very much all.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Basir, for those wise words. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, we'll bring this webinar to a close. I'd like to thank all the organizers who have gone the extra mile in making this possible. Apologies for a few glitches around the way. I'd like to especially thank our keynote speakers, and Dr. Nicola Lowe and Dr. Eric Boy, and particularly Eric for getting up so early in the morning, right after the long Thanksgiving weekend. We will continue this dialogue. We will continue our work in this space. Hopefully by the end of the year, the flood rehabilitation work would be up in full swing. And just so that the people can see, and there is some blatant advertising by Eric on the nutrition activities, but he will be in Pakistan in December, hopefully. And we will take that opportunity to organize also some collaborative work, particularly with our colleagues in Punjab, Multan, Bahawalpur, on some joint activities as part of his visit. So I'll thank you profoundly. We will make these questions available that have been posted in chat, and some we did not address directly, but indirectly. And please keep in touch. And thank you for your support to the Institute for Global Health and Development at Aga Khan University. Thanks very much, and God bless.
Thank you.